Miami's architectural story begins not with grand plans, but with geography and circumstance. In the early 20th century, the shallow bay and mangrove coastline remained largely undeveloped. It's inhabited primarily by the Tequesta people and later by small communities of traders and settlers. The arrival of the Florida East Coast Railway in 1896 transformed the peninsula's prospects. Suddenly, this isolated subtropical outpost became accessible, and entrepreneurs recognized the potential of its climate and waterfront position. What followed was rapid urban development driven by tourism, commerce, and the promise of year-round warmth conditions that would fundamentally shape how Miami was built. The earliest permanent architecture reflected the needs of a frontier town becoming a resort destination. Simple wooden structures gave way to modest brick buildings as the city incorporated in 1896. These early commercial buildings, concentrated along what became downtown, demonstrated the practical colonial revival and neoclassical influences common to American architecture of the period. The layout itself followed economic logic. Buildings clustered near the railroad and the bay, where transportation and trade converged. The city's first decade saw a modest skyline of 2- and 3-story structures, constructed with materials and techniques suited to the local climate and available resources. The 1920s brought dramatic transformation. The land boom, fueled by northern investment and migration, triggered intensive construction across the Miami area. Art Deco emerged as the dominant architectural language, particularly in Miami Beach, where a completely new district rose from mangroves and sand. This style, with its geometric ornamentation, streamlined forms, and vertical emphases, aligned perfectly with the era's optimism and modernity. Architects adapted Art Deco principles to the tropical climate, incorporating shallow balconies, glass block windows, pastel colors that reflected heat while creating visual lightness. Residential hotels, apartment buildings, and commercial structures showcased these features. The density and rapid pace of construction during these years established patterns that persist today: mixed-use neighborhoods, varied building heights, and an aesthetic that blended sophistication with accessibility. The Depression and World War II slowed growth but did not reverse it. The 1930s and 1940s saw refinement rather than expansion, with architects and developers responding to economic constraints through efficient design. Building materials became more standardized, and construction techniques reflected available resources and labor. The wartime period brought military installations and temporary structures, reshaping parts of the landscape. When development resumed after 1945, a new set of influences emerged. Mid-century modernism, with its emphasis on clean lines, functional planning, and integration of interior and exterior spaces, began appearing alongside Art Deco remnants. This period also witnessed the expansion of residential neighborhoods inland. As transportation improvements, particularly road networks, made areas beyond the immediate waterfront accessible and desirable, the post-war decades, particularly the 1950s and 1960s, marked Miami's emergence as a major metropolitan center. The completion of major causeways and bridges connected previously isolated areas, enabling suburban development patterns. High-rise construction accelerated downtown and along Biscayne Boulevard, introducing international-style office towers and residential complexes. These modernist structures, with their glass and steel frames, open floor plans, and separation of functions, represented a departure from earlier aesthetic traditions, but responded to new economic and technological realities. The Biltmore Hotel, the Vizcaya Mansion, and other earlier landmarks were now flanked by contemporary towers. Simultaneously, neighborhoods like Wynwood, Alapata, and Little Havana developed their own character, shaped by successive waves of immigration and specific community needs. Architecture here reflected different priorities: affordable housing, commercial spaces for small businesses, and cultural institutions serving diverse populations. The late 20th century brought further evolution. Economic growth, demographic change, and global influences reshaped Miami's built environment. The 1980s and 1990s witnessed renewed investment in downtown and waterfront areas, with postmodern elements and contemporary designs introducing new visual complexity Preservation efforts emerged during this period as architectural historians and preservationists recognized the cultural and historical value of Art Deco and earlier structures. This conservation impulse created a dialogue between old and new, where historic districts were designated and earlier buildings restored alongside contemporary development. The city's tropical setting continued to influence practical design decisions, hurricane-resistant construction, water management systems, and materials chosen for durability in subtropical conditions became standard considerations. Today, Miami's architecture encompasses layers of its own history. Art Deco hotels from the 1920s stand near modernist towers from the 1960s, themselves now joined by contemporary structures reflecting current design philosophies. The skyline visible from Biscayne Bay reads as a compressed urban history, each wave of construction leaving its mark. The city's neighborhoods, from the preserved streets of South Beach to the rapidly evolving spaces of Wynwood, from established residential areas to emerging urban cores, reflect the economic, demographic, and technological conditions of their respective eras. The original waterfront geography that attracted the first settlers remains present in the city's layout, even as the landscape has been extensively modified through fill, dredging, and construction. Miami's architectural past continues to shape its present identity in tangible ways. The bones of the city's street grid, its relationship to water. Its centers of commerce and residence were established in those early decades and remain visible in current urban patterns. Historical preservation efforts maintain continuity with earlier periods, even as new development responds to contemporary needs and aesthetics. The city's architecture tells the story of rapid growth, economic transformation, cultural pluralism, and adaptation to a distinctive environment. In Miami's buildings, one reads the ambitions, constraints, and choices of successive generations, all layered upon the simple fact of geography, a subtropical peninsula. Once remote, that became one of America's major urban centers,